Greetings, bones and ghouls, and welcome back to INDIEWEEN! We're celebrating the spooky season by sticking it to the AAA slop industrial complex by showcasing a ton of cool, little indie games that we can all buy for the price of a single AAA title, or however many A's I'm supposed to be slapping onto these things now. Also, because I am choosing violence for my workload this month, every one of these videos will have a meal prep cooking segment with full recipes and standalone tutorial videos on Patreon for free for everyone. We're getting some mileage out of those aprons. Today, at the modest price of $14.99, we're going over a more recent title, Heartworm by Vincent Andolfini, as published by DreadX, right at the very end of this July. That's a lot more recent than I usually do for INDIEWEEN titles, but I'm feeling saucy. Heartworm has you following the steps of Sam, who loves her camera and loves her deceased grandpa even more, so much so that when she learns of a strange house that might just be the place where you can learn about the secrets of death and what's after it, she's all over that. Heartworm is, by the very text on the store page, an evolution of 90s survival horror, and I'd at the very least agree that yeah, Heartworm really does love the classics, sometimes to its benefit, sometimes to a fault. Let's take a look. So, about Heartworm's gameplay. Right out of the gate, Heartworm does something I very much appreciate when it comes to onboarding the player. While the tutorial itself is a very run-of-the-mill tutorial, being a low-stakes area with a lot of prompts telling you how to do the controls and a lot of flavor text trying to slip in other mechanics, before you're even in the game, you're taken to an area that not only lets you choose between quote-unquote classic and modern controls, but also lets you mix and match between the two. Better yet, this little area you're in shows you how each individual part of those controls affects the gameplay. 10 out of 10 intro, I love it. More games trying to emulate this classic survival horror control scheme need to do this, and we're not having the conversation about clunky apologia right now. Go to the bird site for that. The meat and potatoes of Heartworm is moving around a mostly fixed camera perspective, and in my case, occasionally moving the camera with you as I'm playing on Modern, managing a limited inventory, and since I'm again playing on Modern, when I ready my weapon, the game zooms into an RE4 style over-the-shoulder perspective to aim, and then I snap a shot with my camera to delete enemies from this plane of existence. The camera is the only real weapon in the game, but combat isn't the focus here. The majority of the time you're using the camera will be when you're using the flash to light up areas so that you can see. Some places are fairly dark to the point that you can't outright see what you're doing, and Sam isn't really suited for combat. That is a huge tub. Like, unless this player character is like 4'10" or something. Ooh, mirrors. Another shitter. This fucking tub, holy hot damn! Like, yeah, also, now that look at this girl compared to the size of this toilet. Is this girl like 4 feet tall, or is this an enormous toilet? All right, gotta get her. There we go. And there you go. Okay, first thing we gotta do is we gotta highlight the toilet paper. I think it's just we're gonna find out that these rolls of toilet paper are enormous. 8.5 rolls of toilet paper. I will be right back. Costco time. Okay. Time for science. You know, I don't even have to, wait, I might have to take these out of the containers. I love Costco, like you only have to buy stuff like once every 6 months. But this, just average roll of toilet paper here, we're gonna measure that. Standing on its like flat side. That is about 4.5 inches. Or conversely, 11 centimeters. So we'll just say 5 inches. So 8 times 5 is 40. And then 40 divided by 12 is 12, 24, 36. This child is 3 feet tall! Let me not scuff the toilet paper. I gotta put this back. We're playing dangerous games here. 8. This child comes up to my hip. Nope. No, don't get scuffed. Look at this. Wait, can we say 8.5? That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, we'll say 9. But still, okay, this child comes to my belly button. No, not even. My belly button's like up here. What the shit? Sam's got a limited inventory, enemies respawn, and you've got like maybe 3 or 4 hits in you before you're donezo. I never actually died, but I attribute that to less of a difficulty issue and more so me knowing what I signed up for, and that includes hoarding healing supplies and juking enemies whenever possible instead of fighting them. Some enemies will be fast enough to where they can keep pace with you. That means that there will be some times where you'll have to watch patrol patterns at the start of the room so you can time dashing to the next area in a way that you can avoid fights. Sometimes though, you just get unlucky and a wolf is right on top of you right as you go into an area, and you gotta burn a few cells of film to get rid of them. When you defeat an enemy, they'll be gone for a while, and depending on how often you need to pass through an area, that might actually make it worth it to pick a fight. I was never able to figure out how long an enemy's gone and if it's based on a timer or maybe how many times you enter an instance, but regardless, it's just a matter of get in, do what you need to do, get out quickly before they start respawning again. Every level in Heartworm is like a big puzzle, and in that puzzle there are lots of little puzzles which you can solve that will give you pieces to solving the big puzzle you currently find yourself in. Based on what I was just saying, and what you're probably expecting me to say, I think you know where this is going. Heartworm does indeed take a lot of pains to emulate the stylings of how late 90s and some early 2000s pre-Resident Evil 4 survival horror games did their core gameplay loop, which is a lot of solving puzzles while spooky things chase you around in a big, confusing maze of a map. There's a lot of running back and forth for certain puzzles, especially in the middle level of the game, and you will find yourself getting frustrated at things like how you'll find yourself running around the map in circles a lot, owing to how certain puzzles are just giant scavenger hunts, where you'll need to hit a bunch of switches or things analogous to a switch, or how some puzzles have somewhat reasonable ciphers to them, but they really have them laid out in a way that makes it hard to tell if you're inputting the solution correctly, and you keep getting it wrong despite ostensibly figuring out the puzzle. I'll even go as far as to say that some of the puzzles are so tedious that I think the game as a whole would be improved by either drastically reworking or even outright removing the forest level in the middle of the game, as it is the worst offender for scavenger hunt puzzles that go across a huge map, and for other reasons I'll get into once we're talking about story stuff. Whether you think it started with Clock Tower or Alone in the Dark, survival horror evolved from adventure games, and we can see that with how older survival horror loves its contrived time waster puzzles, and at times indulges in pixel hunting too. And Heartworm loves the memory of older survival horror games to a fault. Things like the puzzles I mentioned earlier, and how almost every other element of this game feels like it's a callback to another survival horror game, tend to bring Heartworm down in some places. If I had to summarize it in a phrase, the gameplay loop feels as if it's struggling so hard to pay a little tribute to each and every game that might be an inspiration or has big cred in the horror games community, that at times it just entirely forgets to form its own identity and is just doing things for the sake of homage and emulation. Oh, and the sliding tile puzzle. Even Frisk, I don't know if you could hear, even Frisk is upset at the very mention of the sliding tile puzzle of fuck you player, waste 15 minutes of your life. But guess what? They somehow made the sliding tile puzzle worse, because they also turned it into a scavenger hunt puzzle on top of a sliding tile puzzle where you gotta go write everything down to figure out the exact order that things are supposed to be in, because we want you to waste 30 minutes, not 15 minutes of your life. And now that I say that out loud as I'm recording it, that's rather ironic given some of the themes of this game. I've got mixed feelings about deciding to play the rest of the game on my own after trying to stream this on the launch, because when that sliding tile puzzle hit me, I literally screamed. Now, of course, given the nature of this game, there's going to be a lot of exploration, and with exploration comes secrets, optional puzzles to get upgrades for your camera, stuff you gotta do to get different endings, you know what's up. Heartworm's map, while questionable at times, does tell you what region of the area you're in, and better yet, if you squint real close, you can almost make out if there are still things needing to be collected in an area. It's nice when it works, but I did have a couple times where the game suddenly decided that I hadn't collected everything in an area yet, despite being previously clear, and that can get a little troubling when you're trying to hunt for every little thing for completion's sake. Back to those secrets though, they're the kind of things that you might walk up to and interact with, but unless you know what you're supposed to do with that thing, you have no idea how to actually do it or if there's even a puzzle here. Heartworm does have a lot of puzzles that hide in plain sight, and also, at least as far as I can tell, a lot of random red herring things that you can interact with. I hope I'm not being too vague here, but this is very much a game where puzzles can be intertwined with the story, and also in games like this, once you have a puzzle spelled out for you, or you solve it yourself, that drastically increases the amount of game you get in your game, if that makes sense. One of the things you can get as a reward are alternate costumes for Sam for subsequent playthroughs, with some being a little more obvious on how to get them than others, and there are achievements for playing fast, so it's not like this is a one and done type of deal, but I still don't want to dilute things for you when telling you about this game. Now how about them spookies? Well, for the most part, the traditional scares are almost all in the intro house, which does build some pretty good ambience, but outside of that, stuff isn't super freaky. Like, most of the enemy designs aren't all that freaky looking either. Like, I know from my line of work I might be a bit desensitized, but dudes made out of TV static aren't exactly the pinnacle of horror. There are some freaky things, but you're not going to find anything on par with a necromorph or like a licker in Heartworm. On the bright side though, there are no cheap scares or jump scares, and everything is portrayed mostly straightforward. If anything, I don't even think Heartworm is going for traditional scares to begin with. Heartworm's scares are a lot more psychological and, dare I say, existential than something like Dead Space or Amnesia. Heartworm is much more focused on leaving you with thoughts about things you can't exactly shoot your way out of with a camera or even a gun. The inevitable loss of a loved one, or worse yet, their slow decline as they lose themselves before they're gone. What about the same happening to you one day? Are you a good person? Is anything you've ever done going to live beyond your own existence? Stuff like that. Sam is very much having her internal demons externalized right about now, and not everyone is going to manifest Pyramid Head or any given enemy from Cry of Fear when exercising their personal demons. Sam's got other things on her minds. Like this big ol' spider that represents, big ol' spiders? Arachnophobia warning for this game, by the way. Time for some meal prep. We're going to do today what I consider to be the easiest meal prep recipe in my arsenal. It's something so simple that with a couple of shortcuts, it's a less than 15-minute recipe, but I'm feeling extra saucy, so we're making the sauce ourselves. Plus, once you get into the habit of making your own red sauce, it's pretty easy to do, and you won't want to go back to the canned stuff now that you've tasted the other side. First order of business is to finely chop an onion and get that into a high-walled saucepan with some olive oil on a medium-high heat. We want to get the onion to be just barely sweating, and that's going to take a sec, so let's get the everything else done. Take 4 cans of diced tomatoes, or frankly, any kind of tomatoes, and put them in a blender. If you want to get fancy and use the San Marzano tomatoes or an analog to them, you only need like one of those big guys, but I'm using the bulk buy stuff. Now, I know some people have reservations, but if you want a chunky sauce, you just pulse it a couple times in the blender, and you'll have a pulverized tomato sauce while still keeping enough large chunks of tomato intact for your taste. Me, I can't be bothered, so I'm setting my blender to murder, and then letting it go for a few seconds, as I like my sauce cooked down and thick instead of chunky. Now we're going to take a couple little cans of tomato paste, throw them in the pan with the onion, and then add our prepped tomatoes. Gently stir that with a wooden spoon until the paste is incorporated into the rest of the sauce, and then we're going to add a bay leaf if you wanna, then dried parsley, oregano, basil, salt, and a bit of pepper, finally adding some garlic that has been your preferred means of being made very small. I am roughly chopping here. If you're feeling spicy, add a good half tablespoon to full tablespoon of crushed red pepper flakes. Reduce the heat to low and stir occasionally. The best part about this sauce is that it can be done in 15 minutes or it can be done in 4 hours, whatever is more convenient for you. Personally, I let this go on low for quite some time, as not only do I want to deepen that flavor, but you might have also noticed I've got other things on the stove here, and it's nice to be able to have this on the literal back burner for now, and be able to come back to it later when more pressing dishes have been attended to. All in good time though. Okay, time for the everything else. Well, for one, pasta is pasta. Get 2 16-ounce boxes or bags of the short stuff of your choice and ignore the bag's instructions by cooking it for 1 to 2 minutes less than it says. It'll cook more when we add the sauce. Don't forget to salt your pasta water and then save a good amount of it for combining with the sauce later. Now, as for our protein, loosely speaking, we're going to add these chicken apple sausages. The ones I'm using here are just a Costco brand version of the Adeli's brand, both of which can be found in 3 packs at Costco over by where you get the chickens, or if a Costco isn't near you, you can get 3 individual single packs at your local grocery store. These are great not only because they're much lower calorie alternatives to traditional Italian sausage, but they're pre-cooked too, meaning you can just slice right into them. Seriously, if you want to just say screw it and use canned sauce, which I personally advise against, this whole thing can be done in the time it takes to boil the pasta. On that note, if you really want to, like say if you're trying to eat at a caloric surplus or you're going to split these into smaller portions that I do, you can just go ahead and get the normal sweet or spicy Italian sausages and fry them up in the pan before cutting. Heck, back to Costco, they do sell big old packs of that stuff too. That's the equivalent for 3 packs you'd get at the store. And they're right next to those chicken apple sausages too, so you don't have to wander far. I'll admit I haven't seen them in a bit though. However, this adds almost 150 calories, with almost all of that being fat per portion. But if you cook up the sausages first with the tomatoes and onions, you'll be able to get all of that fond off the pan, which makes the sauce have an extra bit of flavor to it. Whatever you choose to do, the sausage is ready to go, and you can either keep them intact and set aside towards the end to cut up into individual portions, or you can just cut it up before and toss it into the pot with everything else. Oh hey, we're basically done. Told you this one was easy. Now, if you want to be really specific about how much sausage is in each of these, set them aside before cutting, and in the meantime, take your drained pasta, reserve starchy water, and your sauce mix, and put them all together in the pot you boiled the pasta in before portioning out. I usually divide this into 10 portions, which is about 1.5 cups of pasta per portion. Now, if you want to be specific about that sausage, you want to cut 2 1/3 links for each portion, given 10 portions. If you don't want to do that and you just don't care, just cut them all up beforehand, toss them into the pot when you're mixing everything together, and just portion them out with sausage already inside. And that'll save you a good 5 to 10 minutes of tedium there. Now, like the MO of this spooky season goes, this cooking segment complete with a recipe and approximate nutrition facts are available as a standalone video over on patreon.com/charlatanwonder completely for free. If you want to support what I do here, you can always pledge anything you can, and I'll be very much appreciative. Think of it as cutting out the middleman for one of those meal prep services and passing a bit of the savings you make from doing so on to me. Or don't. It's cool. Now let's get back to those heartworms. So let's take a look at what exactly is going on in Heartworm. I'm going to tell you now that a lot of this is on the abstract side, but there's enough to where we can just glean off context here to get an idea of what's going on. The premise of Heartworm is that Sam was raised by her grandfather, and his passing is key among other things that Sam is really hung up on. Sam catches wind of an abandoned house way out in the sticks that supposedly holds the secret to life after death, or anything after death for that matter, and despite not a single person returning from that house, she can't pass up the chance to get some closure. Sam finds her way to the house, and alongside piecing together the story of the people that once lived there, finds an absurd amount of old videotapes, as if someone was desperate to catalog every last moment of their life. This ends up being a way to find a doorway to a very strange place that cannot possibly be a part of this material realm. Sam's a little unsure about seeing what's at the other end of that door, but she gets her choice made for her as the spooky man appears. It's TVs. There are TVs at the other side of the door at the long, weird spatial hallway, and they grab her and take her to her childhood neighborhood. It's time to work out some traumas. Now, I hate to bring this up, but I kinda gotta call it how I see it. Sam likes to monologue a lot, and the prose gets purple. I got a whiff of this when the flavor text that explains that taking pictures of baddies gets rid of them was 6 pages long and written less like a diary entry and more like someone trying to write a scary story to submit to a local contest. I'm pretty sure that one of the main reasons why those walks in the forest are so damn long is because they need to be that long to get through some of Sam's monologuing without accidentally entering another instance. You know, I'd mostly be okay with that though if the forest level just dragged less. But as it is, the forest feels like it exists to give Sam more time to journal out loud than it does a level, and they need to have some really far-flung puzzles to compensate for that. There are 3 major levels that mostly represent part of Sam's life. The first being the previously mentioned recreation of Sam's hometown and later an apartment and the city that she frequented. The second is the forest that Sam and her grandfather frequented when Sam was growing up. And the third is a clock tower, which occasionally turns into parts of a hospital, Sam's old high school, her office job, and a general state of delirium at times in strange art galleries. They pack a lot into that last level. Could this be a representation of how life seems to speed up and blur together as you enter adulthood and then into old age? Yeah, probably. I think that's what they were going for. Okay, now we're getting into actual story stuff, so I'm going to mark this as spoilers from here on out. You know what to do if you don't want them. So each area has a big boss fight at the end, and they're easily the weakest part of the game. Thematically, they represent how encountering that dead deer on the forest hike really messed with Sam as a kid, the embodiment of all Sam's doubts and fears of death and her legacy after which, and, big freaky spiders, I guess. None of these boss fights were particularly challenging, and I first tried all of them. Look, now that we're into the spoiler details, I'll also say that while I've seen a lot of outlets, at least with their blurbs, glaze Heartworm, I don't feel the same way. It's a nice game. Nice enough to where I'm still going through with it and I'm willing to scrutinize the game because it's INDIEWEEN, and I actually do have games that I have outright scrapped for this whole month-long thing because I always have a few backups ready to go. And I also know that this is exactly what some of you are looking for, and even though it's not a 10 out of 10 for me, it may be a 10 out of 10 for you. But it does have its hangups, and I'm not going to sit here and just bullshit it. To put it in a word, Heartworm feels like it's on the later stages of its first draft. Everything is there, and all the glaring mistakes are fixed, but a lot of things need reworking for this to be a more cohesive and compelling story. As it is now, Sam gives off big, went to art school on someone else's dime energy. And just to twist the knife while we're here, fits into that archetype that I've met a few too many people like, that despite everything in their power to give off LA or Portland or Austin or wherever energy or whatever the trendy city is now, truth be told, they're from Laguna Niguel, California and went to private school. We're getting a little sidetracked though. I don't say this stuff to be mean. I say this stuff because at times, Sam is a very hard character to connect to. Sam constantly opines about her fear of not having any meaningful legacy, but I don't think we ever get a good look at any sort of body of work, creative or otherwise, she's been contributing to in her life. It's heavily hinted at that she likes photography, but has she tried doing anything with that aside from taking pictures? What does she take pictures of? Does she have a focus, an area of expertise, a muse, anything? She wrings her hands about leaving nothing that's worth preserving, as far as we can tell, she hasn't really started working towards a serious body of work, or even really dialing into what her style is, at least what we're presented with in the game. It's very much a case of that millennial anxiety about the big void in your life while doing nothing to fill it or contribute to filling it, instead choosing to dwell on time in the past considered to be further away while bemoaning that their future has already been taken from them. And I have also met a lot of people like that. Maybe that's why so many gaming outlets praise this. It's millennial writing, but less the kind that film essayists bitch and moan about in children's animated films, and more about the ennui that sets in going through your 30s and beyond, realizing you were too busy navigating crises growing up, and you never put down roots or figured out what you're going to do with your life. In a grand scale sense. Heck, I am a millennial myself, but I at least don't resonate with Sam because I have, this! I've been working at this for 12 years, and frankly, I have enough stuff that I feel proud about this. But this is not the time for me to upload and monetize the introspections on my own life, so let's focus back in. Maybe another way to look at this is perhaps Sam's motivations are vague and vanilla on purpose because she is intended to be a blank slate, a looking glass for the player like Gordon Freeman or Harry Dubois. However, where Harry provides endless ways for the player to fill him with their own beliefs and what they do in all sorts of scenarios, and Gordon Freeman gets a gravity gun and to save humanity, Sam feels like she's a passenger in her own adventure, which is especially disappointing when that adventure is literally going through the physical manifestations of her own life and past traumas. I don't know if this was like some sort of result of time limitations, but we don't even get actual descriptions or like pictures of the Polaroids we collect to get the good ending. Just vague ideas of how they make her feel when she looks at them. Any way you slice it, it feels like we need more to really connect to or at least see ourselves in Sam, or at the very, very least, see why we should root for Sam and go along with her on this journey. Wait, this was a plot synopsis. I'm so sorry. But if I really just hated this game, like, I don't like doing videos where I shit on things anymore. It's unhealthy and unproductive. Like, if I didn't want to do it, I'd just not make the video. I care about this game enough to where I'm willing to pick this apart and see that, yes, there is a spark of brilliance in here, but maybe this was needed a second draft. Back to that plot summary though, Sam confronts the spooky dude in a big boss fight that feels like it'd be more at home in an action platformer, and then it turns out Mr. Spooky is actually Mrs. Spooky and is some kind of aspect of her and all her self-doubts, and depending on all the secret photos you collect and remembered to put in the thing in the hub world, you'll either mope along with her, staying inside of this strange house clock tower thing forever, leave and go live your life, or take Mrs. Spooky along with you and have a merry time hunting for spears together. The end. I know I was hard on the game, but if I really didn't like it, I would have just scrapped the video. And like I said earlier, I already have scrapped other contenders for this year's INDIEWEEN, and I always have several games back up on standby in case one bombs, which one really did bomb this year, like really bad. Heartworm loves its classic survival horror to a fault, and if you love that classic tank control puzzle solving mess, for better or for worse, this game's for you. Another thing of note before we go is that there were a few other things I had issues with that I left out in this video because, well, the game got major patches that fixed a lot of other issues I had between my time playing it and writing this video, and rather than just go on what is purely my experience with the game, I'm going to account for that and not complain about things that already got fixed. I usually don't include recent titles in INDIEWEEN and wanted to try at least one, and of course, something exactly like this, which could happen when you do that, did happen. But such is life. There's actually one more recent title this year that also happens to be a DreadX game too, and I think you know which one. It was Zero Protocol at $11.99, Brush Burial at $6.99, and Heartworm at $14.99. That brings us up to a total of $33.97. Join us next video where the total's gonna go up to $48.96. We're gonna be 4 games in, and we're not even at the old MSRP of $60 yet. The next game's also one I ended up really enjoying. It's something that scratched an itch I've been waiting for a long time to get scratched. In the meantime, be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, and tell me your own thoughts on the game or existential dreads in the comments. It really helps this video along on its journey through YouTube. Don't forget to check and make sure you're subscribed too, because I'm going into maximum overdrive to prove my point about AAA pricing bloat, so these videos aren't always going to come out at the usual time and place. Oh yeah, and hyping is a thing now. If you're able to do that, that helps too. Also, as this video goes live, I'll be on the Purple Place streaming spooky stuff, so come on by. Now don't forget to check out those recipes, and let's sign off. Remember that no matter what you do, be it photography, sculpting, or playing music, what you do should never be called content. It is art. Content is a word that in recent years has been twisted into meaning a means to grind up all your skills, passions, and aspirations into a gray sludge that is meant for nothing more than to make a line go up for someone else's benefit. Art is sacred. Art is inalienably a reflection of its creator, and in no way do you deserve to be reduced to content. So get out there and fight for your art and fight for yourself by fighting against the contentification of everything. Stay saucy. The things I catch this boy doing. I caught him here lurking by my shoes. Like, it's pretty late at night, we should be going to bed right now, but he's just here by the shoes, and I don't know what his plot is. What are you planning with my shoes? Are you just appreciating the shoes? Oh, you're just a shoe appreciator. I don't know if it's a cats in general thing, but he just really likes rubbing up against like kind of rough but fabric textures. He likes having a sniff. Okay, if this is all you're doing, you're not trying to eat anything, you're not trying to like knock things off the table, that's fine. Just, oh, look, that was a yawn caught right on camera. You know, I'm pleasantly surprised. For once, he isn't making mischief or doing anything he generally probably shouldn't. He's just enjoying the shoes. I'll leave you to it, Frisk. Damn, I gotta get that fixed.